The scissors fell to the floor. The whole salon went completely silent. Ngozi stood behind her customer's chair, her hands frozen in the air, her eyes wide open like she had just seen a ghost. But it was not a ghost. It was a phone screen. A phone screen she was never supposed to see. Her customer, a fine woman named Mrs. Adiz, had fallen asleep in the chair while waiting for her hair to dry under the dryer. Her phone had slipped from her hand and landed face up on the armrest. The screen was still on. The message was still showing. And what Ngozi read on that screen made her stomach drop all the way to the ground. It was a voice note transcript. Just a few lines. But those few lines told a story so dangerous, so dark, so shocking, that Ngozi's whole body began to shake. She looked around the salon. 2 other customers were sitting in chairs, scrolling their phones, minding their business. Her apprentice, a young girl named Titi, was sweeping the floor in the corner. Nobody was watching. Ngozi looked at the phone again. She read the message one more time, slowly, making sure her eyes were not playing tricks on her. They were not. She quickly looked away. Her heart was pounding like a drum. She wanted to pretend she hadn't seen anything. She wanted to just pick up her scissors, finish the hair, and move on with her life. But Ngozi had never been that kind of woman. She had always said, "If I know something, I will say something." That was her gift. And on this day, that gift was about to become her biggest problem. Because 40 minutes later, 2 police officers walked through the front door of her salon. And they were not there for a haircut. Wait. Don't go anywhere. Before I continue this story, I need to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop your country or city in the comments. I love to see where my viewers are coming from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. It costs you nothing, but it means everything to this channel. Now let's go back to the beginning. Because this story, it didn't start in that salon chair. It started many, many years ago. Ngozi grew up in a noisy, colorful neighborhood in Enugu State, Nigeria. She was the 3rd child of 5, born to a seamstress mother and a mechanic father who worked long hours and came home smelling of engine oil and hard work. From a very young age, Ngozi had 2 things that made her stand out. The first was her hands. She had the most careful, most precise hands of any child in her compound. By the time she was 12, she was plaiting the hair of every woman on her street. By 14, she could do cornrows, threading, weaving, and even simple wigs. All without watching a single YouTube video because YouTube didn't exist back then. Her mother used to say, "God put something special inside those fingers." The second thing that made Ngozi stand out was her mouth. Not in a bad way, at least not at first. Ngozi was simply a talker. She loved to talk. She loved to share. She loved to know what was happening around her, and she loved even more to tell other people about it. In school, she always knew whose parents were fighting, whose brother had failed his exams, whose auntie had come back from abroad with a new husband. She knew everything, and she told everything. Her friends loved it. They called her the newspaper. "Go and ask Ngozi," they would say. "She will tell you everything." As a teenager, this habit was harmless. It was almost funny. But as Ngozi grew older, got married, opened her own salon, and became a respected businesswoman in her community, the habit grew with her. And a habit that is funny in a 14-year-old girl becomes something very different in a 35-year-old woman who knows everybody's secrets. Ngozi's salon was called Glamour Touch Beauty World. It was located on a busy street in a medium-sized town, sandwiched between a pharmacy and a provision store. The shop was not big, 4 styling chairs, 2 dryer chairs, a small reception desk, and a back room where Ngozi kept her supplies. The walls were painted a bright coral pink, and she had put up framed photos of beautiful hairstyles all around. A small flat-screen TV played Nollywood movies on low volume throughout the day. But the real entertainment at Glamour Touch was not on the TV. It was the conversation. Ngozi ran her salon the way a radio station runs a talk show, with hot topics, fresh gist, and 0 filters. Every customer who walked through that door was both an audience member and a potential source of information. "Did you hear about Pastor Emeka's wife?" she would say, lowering her voice to a dramatic whisper as she worked on someone's hair. "No. What happened?" And then Ngozi would lean forward, eyes sparkling, and begin to talk. She talked about marriages falling apart. She talked about business deals gone wrong. She talked about who was pregnant and who wasn't supposed to be. She talked about cheating husbands and lying wives and children who had been sent back from abroad in shame. She talked and talked and talked, and her customers loved every single word of it. People didn't just come to Ngozi for their hair. They came for the experience. They came to sit down, relax, and hear the latest news from the most informed woman in town. And business was good. Very good. Ngozi had a waiting list. She raised her prices twice in 3 years, and still her chairs were full. She hired Titi as her apprentice, bought a second dryer, and even started selling hair products by the shelf near the entrance. Life was sweet. But the thing about gossip is this: it travels. And it doesn't always travel in the direction you expect. Mrs. Adiz Okonkwo first came to Glamour Touch about 8 months before the day the police walked in. She was not from the area. She had recently moved into the big estate at the top of the hill, the one with the tall fence and the security gate where only people with money lived. She drove a white SUV, wore good shoes, and always smelled like expensive perfume. She was beautiful in a quiet, controlled way. She didn't talk much. She didn't ask questions. She just sat in the chair, looked at her phone, and let Ngozi work. Ngozi had tried several times to pull her into conversation. "Madam, you are from where originally?" "Delta," Mrs. Adiz would say. Short. Simple. End of discussion. "Your husband, is he in business or government?" "Both," she would reply, without even looking up from her phone. Ngozi found this very frustrating. She was used to people opening up to her within the first 10 minutes. But Mrs. Adiz was like a locked door. Beautiful on the outside. Nothing coming out from the inside. Still, Ngozi liked her. There was something calm and dignified about the woman that Ngozi respected, even if she couldn't crack her open. Over the months, Mrs. Adiz came every 3 weeks, regular as clockwork. She always requested a full styling session: wash, condition, blow-dry, and set. She always paid on time, tipped generously, and never caused any trouble. She was the perfect customer, which is why what happened on that Tuesday afternoon felt so strange, so unexpected, so completely out of place. It was a Tuesday, a slow afternoon. The town had been unusually quiet that week. There was some kind of community tension, a land dispute between 2 big families that had people walking carefully and speaking in lower voices than usual. Even Ngozi had been a little more careful with her gist, sticking to lighter topics like celebrity drama and food prices. Mrs. Adiz arrived at 2 p.m., right on schedule. She looked different that day. Tired. There were small shadows under her eyes, and she was wearing less jewelry than usual. Just a plain gold band on her finger and small stud earrings. She handed her bag to Titi, sat down in the chair, and said nothing. Ngozi started her usual process. Shampoo. Condition. The warm water running over Mrs. Adiz's scalp seemed to relax her, and by the time she was seated under the dryer, her eyes had already started to close. Within 15 minutes, she was fully asleep. Her phone, a new, expensive model in a plain black case, was resting loosely in her hand. As her body relaxed deeper into sleep, her fingers went slack. The phone tilted, slid, and landed face up on the wide armrest of the dryer chair, screen still glowing. Ngozi was walking past to get a comb from the station nearby when she saw it. She didn't plan to read it. She genuinely didn't. She just happened to glance down at the bright screen, the way anyone would glance at a light in a dark room. But what she saw made her feet stop moving completely. It was a WhatsApp message. A long one. Not a voice note, but a transcription of a voice note, the kind the app automatically generates now. The sender's name was saved as simply K, and the message read, "The body has been moved. The driver doesn't know anything. Make sure you don't go to that police station. They already have your number. Lie low. I'll handle the rest. Don't call me again from this phone." Ngozi stared at the screen. She read it again. The body has been moved. She felt cold. She felt hot. She felt both at the same time. Her mind started racing. What body? Whose body? What driver? What police station? She looked at Mrs. Adiz, sleeping peacefully in the chair, chest rising and falling gently, as if she hadn't a care in the world. This woman? Ngozi thought. This quiet, well-dressed, soft-spoken woman? She stepped back from the chair. Her hands were trembling slightly. She gripped the comb tightly to stop them from shaking. The logical part of her brain, the small, quiet voice she almost never listened to, said, "Ngozi, put it down. It's not your business. Mind yourself." But the other part of her, the louder, more powerful part that had been running her life for 35 years, said something different. It said, "You have to say something." Ngozi spent the next 20 minutes in a kind of internal war. She finished styling the other customer who was waiting, a young teacher named Blessing who always came in on Tuesdays. Her hands moved automatically, pinning and twisting and securing, while her mind was somewhere else entirely. Maybe it's nothing, she told herself. Maybe body means something else. Maybe it's a movie script. Maybe it's a joke. But even as she told herself these things, she knew. She had lived long enough, heard enough stories, sat close enough to enough different kinds of people, to know what that message felt like. It felt real. And it felt dangerous. When Blessing left and TT went to the back to prepare for the next customer, Ngozi stood alone in the salon for a brief moment. Just her and the sleeping Mrs. Adiz. She made a decision. She pulled out her own phone. Her hands were still shaking. She opened the dial pad. And she called her cousin Emeka, a man who worked in the local police station as an administrative officer. Emeka, she whispered, turning slightly away from Mrs. Adiz and lowering her voice to almost nothing. I need to tell you something. Something serious. But you have to come here quietly, okay? Don't make noise. Just come. She told him just enough. Just the key words. And Emeka, God bless him, took it seriously. The next 30 minutes were the longest of Ngozi's life. 2 more customers came in. She attended to them. She laughed at a joke. She answered a question about a new braiding style. She watched the door. She watched Mrs. Adiz, who was still asleep, occasionally shifting in the dryer chair. TT was chattering about something, a boy from her church who had been disturbing her, but Ngozi could barely hear her. Her ears were trained on the sound of the street outside. Every car that slowed down made her look up. Every footstep on the pavement made her heart jump. What if I'm wrong? She thought. What if this woman is completely innocent and I just ruined her life with one phone call? She felt sick with doubt. But then she thought about those words again. The body has been moved. And the doubt went quiet. It was almost 4 p.m. when the door opened. Not Emeka. 2 officers she didn't recognize. Uniforms. Professional faces. The kind of expressions that give nothing away. The salon went completely still. One officer stayed near the door. The other walked slowly into the room, looked around once, and then his eyes landed on Mrs. Adiz, still half asleep in the dryer chair, hair freshly set, hands folded in her lap. He walked directly to her. Mrs. Adiz Okonkwo? Her eyes snapped open. For one moment, just one, she looked confused. The way anyone does when they're woken from sleep in a public place. She blinked, looked at the officer, looked around the salon, looked at Ngozi. And in that look, something passed between the 2 women. Mrs. Adiz's eyes narrowed. Not with anger. Not with fear. With something much more frightening. Understanding. She knew. Somehow, in that split second, she knew. She sat up slowly, calmly, like a woman who had been expecting this day for a long time. Yes, she said quietly. I am Adiz Okonkwo. Please come with us, Ma, the officer said. We have some questions for you at the station. She stood. She straightened her clothes. She picked up her bag. She did not cry. She did not protest. She did not even raise her voice. But as the officer guided her toward the door, she stopped. She turned around. And she looked directly at Ngozi, who was standing frozen beside the styling station, scissors still in her hand from when she had dropped them, mouth slightly open, eyes wide. Mrs. Adiz looked at her for a long, long moment. Then she said, in a voice that was barely above a whisper but somehow filled the entire room, I hope you know what you've started. And then she walked out the door. The police car outside started its engine. Drove away. The street returned to its normal sounds. Motorcycles, vendors, children playing somewhere far away. Inside Glamour Touch Beauty World, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Ngozi stood in the middle of her salon, scissors in hand, heart hammering, staring at the empty chair where Mrs. Adiz had been sitting just moments ago. And for the first time in her life, Ngozi, the woman who always had something to say, the woman they called the newspaper, the woman who had never once kept a secret, did not know what to do next. Because Mrs. Adiz's last words were not just words. They were a warning. And warnings from quiet women are almost always the most dangerous kind. The chair was still warm. Ngozi could see it from where she stood. The small indent in the cushion where Mrs. Adiz had been sitting, the slight warmth still rising from the dryer hood above it. The woman had been there just 2 minutes ago, calm as still water, and now she was gone. Driven away in a police car like it was nothing. Like she had simply stepped out to buy something from the shop across the street and would be back shortly. But she wasn't coming back shortly. And those words, "I hope you know what you've started," were still hanging in the air of the salon like smoke after a fire. Ngozi's customer in the chair, a woman named Mama Chisholm who had been getting her edges laid when the police walked in, cleared her throat gently. "Ngozi, are you okay?" Ngozi blinked, looked at the scissors in her hand, put them down on the station very carefully, the way you put something down when your hands are not quite steady enough to hold it safely. "I'm fine," she said. She was not fine. She had just done something she could not undo. She had looked at another woman's phone. She had read a private message. She had called the police on one of her most loyal customers. And now that customer, a woman connected to powerful people, a woman who lived in the gated estate at the top of the hill, a woman whose husband was in both business and government, had looked her in the eye and told her she had started something. Ngozi had told thousands of people's stories in her salon. Now, for the very first time, she was afraid that someone was about to tell hers. Ngozi closed the salon early that evening. She sent TT home at 5 o'clock, finished cleaning up alone, locked the front door, and sat down in one of the empty styling chairs in the quiet coral pink room. The TV was still on, a Nollywood film where a woman was crying dramatically about a betrayal. And for a moment, Ngozi almost laughed at how perfectly it matched her mood. Almost. She called her husband Chikwudi 3 times before he picked up. "There is something I need to tell you," she said. Chikwudi came to the salon within 20 minutes. He was a big, quiet man who fixed generators for a living. He was not a man who panicked easily. He had seen Ngozi in many dramatic moods over their 11 years of marriage, and he had learned to separate the genuinely serious moments from the regular, everyday drama. When she told him what happened, the phone, the message, the words, "the body has been moved," the police, the way Mrs. Adiz had looked at her before leaving, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Ngozi, why didn't you just leave it?" "How could I leave it?" she said. "A body, Chikwudi. A body." "You don't even know what that message meant," he said. "It could mean anything. It meant what it said." He rubbed his face with both hands. "You should have called a lawyer before you called the police." "I'm not a criminal. Why do I need a lawyer?" "Because," he said slowly, "when you involve yourself in powerful people's business, you need protection. Even when you're on the right side." Ngozi stared at him. She had never thought about it that way. She had been so focused on doing the right thing, on not being the kind of person who sees something wrong and says nothing, that she had not thought about what doing the right thing might cost her. That night, she did not sleep well. By the next morning, the story had already left the salon. This was partly Ngozi's fault. She had told Mama Chisholm not to say anything, which, as anyone with sense knows, is practically the same as announcing it with a megaphone. Mama Chisholm had told her sister. Her sister had told her neighbor. By 8 a.m., 3 different people had called Ngozi to ask if it was true that she had reported Mrs. Adiz Okonkwo to the police. Ngozi confirmed nothing. She denied nothing. She said, "I don't know what you people are talking about," which everybody understood to mean yes, it's true. By midday, opinions were divided. Half the town said Ngozi was brave. A hero, even. That woman did the right thing. If you see something, you report it. That is how a community protects itself. The other half said Ngozi had made a terrible mistake. Does she know who that woman's husband is? Does she know what family they come from? This Ngozi has been talking too much for too long. One day her mouth was going to land her in serious trouble. Today is that day. The customers who came to the salon that Wednesday were unusually quiet. They looked at Ngozi with a mixture of admiration and pity. The kind of look you give someone who has just jumped off a high cliff and is still falling, and you don't yet know if there is water below or rocks. Ngozi tried to act normal. She braided. She styled. She laughed at a few jokes. But her phone kept buzzing, her eyes kept going to the door, and her mind was somewhere far away from the hair in her hands. She was waiting. She didn't know what she was waiting for exactly, but she knew something was coming. It came on Thursday morning, before the salon even opened. Ngozi was inside, setting up for the day, when she heard a knock on the locked front door. Sharp, confident, the knock of someone who was used to doors opening for them. She opened it. There were 2 men standing outside. They were not in uniform. They were wearing plain clothes, neat trousers, plain shirts, good shoes. But there was something about the way they stood, the way they looked at her without blinking, that told her immediately these were not regular people. The taller one spoke first. "Good morning. Are you Miss Ngozi Ease, owner of this salon?" "Yes," she said carefully. Good morning. How can I help you? We are detectives from the State Criminal Investigation Department, he said, showing her an ID card briefly. We need you to come with us and make a formal statement about an incident that occurred here on Tuesday. Ngozi's stomach dropped. A statement, she repeated. Am I in trouble? You are not in trouble, Ma, the shorter one said. His voice was softer, almost reassuring. We just need your account of what you observed. You are a witness. That is all. A witness. Ngozi had never been a witness to anything in her life. Not officially. Not in a police station, with a recorder and a written statement. She had told plenty of stories, but there was a very large difference between telling gist in a salon chair and giving a legal statement to criminal investigators. She called Chakwudi. He came. He insisted on going with her. They locked the salon and drove to the CID office together, neither of them speaking much in the car. The interview room was small and plain. A table for chairs, a window with frosted glass that let in light but showed nothing outside. The detective who took her statement was a woman. Calm, efficient, and very precise with her questions. She asked Ngozi to describe exactly what she had seen on the phone screen. Exactly where she was standing. Exactly what time it was. Exactly what she did after reading the message. Exactly what she said on the phone to her cousin Emeka. Ngozi answered everything truthfully. She was good at talking, after all. When the statement was completed and signed, the detective sat back and looked at Ngozi for a moment. Then she said, I want to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. Ngozi nodded. The message you saw on Mrs. Okonkwo's phone is connected to an ongoing investigation, the detective said. A serious one. We had been trying to reach her for several weeks. Your call on Tuesday allowed us to locate her and bring her in for questioning. You may have helped us significantly. Ngozi felt a small rush of relief. See, she had done the right thing. But the detective wasn't finished. However, she continued, her voice dropping slightly, I want you to understand that the people connected to this case are not ordinary people. They have resources. They have contacts. When someone interferes with their business, even by accident, they sometimes respond. We cannot provide you with personal protection, but we are asking you to be careful. Be very careful about what you say publicly, who you talk to, and what information you share. Ngozi sat very still. Are you saying I'm in danger? She asked quietly. The detective didn't answer directly. She just looked at her steadily and said, I'm saying be careful. What Ngozi did not know, what she had no way of knowing when she read that message on a Tuesday afternoon in her coral pink salon, was the full story behind those words. It came out slowly in pieces over the following days. Through Emeka, who heard things at the station. Through a journalist who called the salon asking for comment. Through whispers in the market and conversations carried on the wind the way conversations always travel in small Nigerian towns. The story was this. 3 weeks before that Tuesday, a young man had gone missing. His name was Tebena. He was 24 years old. He had been working as a driver. Not a regular driver, but a private driver for a man connected to Mrs. Adi's husband. A man named simply as K in the messages on her phone. Tebena had seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Nobody was sure exactly what. Some said it was a document. Others said it was a meeting. Others said he had overheard a conversation that could have put very powerful people in very serious trouble. Whatever it was, Tebena had made the mistake of telling someone about it. And shortly after that, he disappeared. His family had been looking for him. His mother had gone to the police. But the police in the local station had done very little, because the people connected to his disappearance were the kind of people who made policemen look the other way. And then there was the message Ngozi had read. The body has been moved. When the CID investigators brought Mrs. Adiz in for questioning and showed her the transcript of that message, the message she didn't even know had been accidentally displayed on an open phone screen in a hairdresser's salon. Something cracked in her composure. She was not the person who had done the terrible thing. That much became clear quickly. But she knew who had, and she had been protecting him. Mrs. Adiz had married her husband, Senator Boniface Okonkwo, when she was 26 years old. He was 15 years older, already established, already powerful. She had loved him in the beginning, genuinely, completely. She had believed in him. But over the years, she had learned things about the man she married. Small things first, then bigger things. Then things that kept her awake at night and made her look at her reflection in the mirror with something close to shame. She had stayed. Women like her always stayed, and the world always had a long list of reasons why: children, society, finances, fear. She had all of those reasons. But when Tabena disappeared and when Kay, her husband's most trusted associate, had sent her that message telling her to stay silent and lie low, something inside her that had been bent for a very long time finally, quietly broke. She had not known Tabena personally. He was just a young man who drove a car. But he had a mother. And his mother had come to the gate of their estate 3 days after he disappeared, crying, begging just to know if anyone had seen her son. The security guard had turned her away. Mrs. Adiz had watched from the window of her upstairs bedroom. She had done nothing. And that image, the crying mother being turned away from the gate, had been living inside her chest like a stone ever since. When the detective sat across from her in that interview room and told her that a hairdresser, a woman she had trusted with nothing more than her hair, had read a message on her phone and called the police out of sheer conviction that something was wrong, Mrs. Adiz put her face in her hands. And she started to talk. She talked for 4 hours. She told them about Kay, whose full name was Kingsley Madhu, her husband's business associate and fixer. She told them about the land deals, the contracts, the money that moved in directions it was never supposed to move. She told them what she knew about Tabena and what she suspected, and where she had heard certain conversations she was never meant to hear. Most importantly, she told them about a property, a building outside town, old and mostly abandoned, that belonged to one of her husband's shell companies. The investigators went there the following morning. They found Tabena. He was alive, barely, dehydrated, frightened, having been held in a back room for nearly 4 weeks, but alive. He had been kept alive because Kingsley had not yet decided what to do with him. Some terrible decisions, when delayed long enough, end up never being made at all. When Tabena was found and taken to the hospital, when his mother was called and she ran through the hospital corridor crying his name, that was the moment the case became something that even the most connected people in that town could not make disappear. Kingsley Madhu was arrested within 24 hours. Senator Boniface Okonkwo was called in for questioning the day after. And the whole town, which had been watching this story unfold with wide eyes and hushed voices, erupted. Ngozi heard about Tabena being found alive on a Friday morning. Emeka called her. He could barely speak properly. His voice was jumping with excitement. Ngozi, they found him. He is alive. The boy is alive. She sat down right there in the middle of the salon, in the middle of a working day, with 2 customers in chairs and tea frozen behind one of them, and she pressed her hand over her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears. Something else. The kind of tears that come when something that was twisted for too long finally straightens out. The kind of tears that surprise you because you didn't know you were carrying that weight until it was suddenly lifted. A boy was alive because she had looked at a phone screen. A mother had her son back because Ngozi Ease, the woman who could never keep quiet, the woman who always had something to say, the woman who had spent her whole career inside other people's business, had for once used her inability to stay silent for something that actually mattered. Mama Chisholm, who was sitting in one of the styling chairs with a head full of rollers, looked at Ngozi's face and immediately understood that something significant had happened. "Is it good news?" she asked softly. "Yes," Ngozi managed to say. "It's good news." The salon was quiet for a moment. Then Titi, young, dramatic, always a little bit extra, let out a loud "thank God." That made everyone laugh, and just like that, the heavy air in the room broke open like a cloud releasing rain. 2 weeks after her arrest, Mrs. Adiz was released. She had been cooperative with investigators from the very beginning. She had not committed the crimes herself. Her legal team worked quickly, and the charges against her personally were ultimately not pursued. But her life as she had known it was over. Her husband was facing serious legal consequences. The estate at the top of the hill was being examined by investigators. She packed some bags and went to stay with her sister in another city, and the white SUV that used to glide past the market every few days was gone. On the evening before she left town, she came to Glamour Touch Beauty World. Alone. No driver. Just her in a simple dress, looking quieter and more tired than Ngozi had ever seen her, but also, somehow, lighter. Like a woman who had put down something very heavy and was still getting used to the feeling of empty hands. Ngozi saw her through the salon window and felt her heart rate go up immediately. She came to the door. The 2 women stood facing each other on the pavement outside the salon. The evening light was gold and soft. Somewhere nearby, somebody was frying akara, and the smell drifted pleasantly through the warm air. Mrs. Adiz spoke first. "I said something to you when I left here," she said. "I told you that you didn't know what you had started." "I remember," Ngozi said carefully. "I was frightened," Mrs. Adiz said simply. "I thought my whole world was falling apart, and I was angry at the person closest to me when it happened. That was you." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What you started was the end of a very long lie. And I want to thank you for it, even though it didn't feel like a kindness at the time." Ngozi didn't know what to say, which was, for her, extremely rare. Mrs. Adiz reached into her bag and took out an envelope. She held it out. "I want to pay for my last session," she said. "I left in a hurry and I never settled my bill." Ngozi looked at the envelope. She shook her head. "Keep it," she said quietly. "This one is on me." For the first time since Ngozi had known her, Mrs. Adiz smiled. A real smile, small and a little sad but real. "Take care of yourself, Ngozi," she said. "You too," Ngozi replied. And then Mrs. Adiz turned and walked away, and Ngozi stood on the pavement outside her salon and watched her go until she turned the corner and disappeared. Life at Glamour Touch went back to normal, mostly. Business was actually better than before. People came from further away now, curious about the famous hairdresser who had helped crack a criminal case. New customers arrived. Old customers returned. The waiting list got longer. But something had changed in Ngozi. Not completely. She was still a talker. She still loved conversation. She still knew more about the people in her town than almost anyone else. Some habits are too old and too deep to remove completely, like old cornrows grown into the scalp. But she had learned something that no amount of gist could have taught her. She had learned that words have weight. She had spent years treating information like entertainment, picking it up, turning it over, passing it along, watching people's eyes go wide, enjoying the power of being the one who knows. And in doing all that, she had sometimes hurt people. She knew that. She had talked about marriages that didn't need to be talked about, and shared secrets that weren't hers to share. And she had told herself it was harmless because nobody had ever looked her in the eye and shown her the direct consequence of her words. But on a Tuesday afternoon in her coral pink salon, she had finally understood what it felt like to have information and have to choose what to do with it. Not for entertainment, not for the pleasure of the story, but with real stakes, real consequences, a real life hanging in the balance. She had chosen right that time. But she knew, and this was the part that kept her humble, that she had not always chosen right in the past. And the only difference between the gossip that saved a life and the gossip that ruins one is whether the words you speak are spoken for the right reasons. That was the thing Ngozi Ease, age 35, hairdresser, mother of 2, and formerly the most talkative woman in the whole town, finally understood. Words can save, and words can destroy. The mouth that holds them is the only one who gets to decide which one they do. 3 months after everything happened, on a bright Saturday morning, a young woman walked into Glamour Touch Beauty World for the first time. She was maybe 20 years old. Nervous. She looked around at the coral pink walls and the framed photos of hairstyles and the small TV playing Nollywood on low volume. "Good morning," she said. "I heard this is the best salon in town." Ngozi looked up from the chair she was styling and smiled at her. "Sit down," she said warmly. "Tell me what you want." The young woman sat. She looked at Ngozi in the mirror with a slightly curious expression. "Are you the one," she said slowly, "who helped find that missing driver? The one from the news?" Ngozi was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up her comb, ran it gently through the young woman's hair, and said, "I'm just a hairdresser." She paused, then added with the smallest smile, "I just pay attention." And outside, through the open salon door, the town went on as it always did, noisy, colorful, full of stories. Some of them happy, some of them sad, some of them dangerous in ways nobody could predict until it was almost too late. And in the middle of it all, Glamour Touch Beauty World stayed open. The chairs stayed full. The scissors kept moving. And Ngozi Ease, who had learned at last the difference between a story worth telling and a secret worth keeping, kept right on doing what she had always done. She paid attention. And that, my friends, is the full story. A phone screen. A sleepy customer. One woman who could not stay quiet. And a young man who came home alive because of it. Sometimes the thing that looks like a flaw, that part of you that can't mind its business, that has to speak, that has to act, is the very thing that was put inside you for a reason. The question is not whether you have a voice. The question is what you choose to do with it. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you feel something, please share it with someone today. You never know who needs to hear it. And please, subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Every single subscriber helps us keep making powerful stories like this one. Hit the bell so you never miss an upload. I'll see you in the next story. Stay wise, stay kind, and always, always pay attention.